All right, party people, so like the title of the video says, this is probably the most awesome AR-15 that I've ever had, but it's also going to be the one that no one will buy. And we're going to talk about why. This is the CMMG MK57, meaning it shoots the 5.7 by 28mm round. One of the biggest benefits to the 5.7 round, especially for like an AR configuration, is you get high velocities at lower recoil. And if you're familiar with CMMG guns, they have radial delay blowback in them. And radial delay blowback, we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute, but it really lowers the recoil of a gun and the muzzle rise. And I didn't realize how much it actually reduced muzzle rise and recoil until Mr. Guns and Gear was out here visiting and he had one of his stores, and we put a standard 9mm upper on it, and then we put the radial delayed 9mm upper on it, and the differences were insane. So let's dive up close real quick. We're gonna take a look at this little guy. We'll go over some shooting footage and stuff here in a minute, and I'm gonna tell you about any problems that I may have had with it. And then we'll go over all the pros and cons of the 5.7 round and why I don't think anyone's gonna buy it. So with this kit, this is a kit that CMMG offers. They actually have different ones at different price points. So what I will do, if you follow the first link in the video description, there'll be an entire list for everything that we're talking about. So this is the lower from my very first AR pistol build that we did on this channel. It's the Aero Precision lower. It's nothing crazy. It's got just a standard plastic mag pull grip. We have one of the OG adjustable braces from SB Tactical right here. And I just installed and tested out the CMC flat trigger single stage. I love this trigger to death, and you know, we'll talk about it a little bit more here in a minute. But in the kit that I received, you just basically got this upper without all these attachments on it, and these two magazines. They do have some kits, I think, that have 3 magazines and some that have 2, and I think they even have some that don't have any magazines. But we'll talk about the mags here in a minute. This is the Midnight Bronze Cerakote option. I believe their Cerakote options are like an additional $100. This comes with everything you see except for the sights, the red dot, this foregrip, and this Picatinny mount right here. But it does come with this very nice charging handle, which is very similar, if not the same, Radian charging handle, but this is the CMMG one. I love ambidextrous charging handles. They just make life so much easier. And then this is the bolt carrier. And this is what I was talking about with radial delay, but interestingly enough, this one is skeletonized. So it's a lot lighter on the back end than your average bolt carrier group. But the way radial delay works is it's a little spring pressure back here. So on your typical AR-15 bolt carrier groups, if you push this in, it simply stays in. And the way radial delay was kind of invented, from what I'm told here, I could be wrong about this, is it first came out, as far as I remember, I could be totally wrong about this, I first remembered hearing about it on their 9mm Banshee. And this is a Banshee as well, it's just the 5.7 Banshee. This is by far my all-time favorite AR pistol that I own. But what they were noticing was, on standard blowback uppers for the AR platform for like 9mm, they were noticing that this would unlock a little bit prematurely. And when it unlocks a little bit prematurely and this comes out of the chamber, essentially what happens is some of that back pressure that propels the bullet downrange was escaping back here, and it was lowering the velocity of the bullets. So CMMG realized, well, if we just add a couple of milliseconds to this before it completely unlocks, we can get all the velocity out of the pistol caliber rounds. And so they added a little spring. So as this goes to recoil, this thing stays in the chamber until it's completely exited the barrel. And they have all these tuned from the factory, you know, for the specific caliber. So that's good to know. I added a couple little goodies on it. I had a light on here at one point. I believe it was an Olight. I've just been using those lights. I'm gonna try some different ones soon. And this guy right here was the foregrip that I put on my very first AR-15 rifle build. It's a Strike Industries. I think it's called a Viper. I'll put links to it in the build list. I don't remember the exact name, but then these sights, these were just some cheap sights that I got. They're plastic, but they got some really strong springs in them. This red dot is one of my favorite red dots for, you know, pistol caliber carbines, SBRs, and even full-size AR-15s. I love them. They have this quick detach mount down here. I don't know how well y'all can see that. It's gonna be hard to show. You can't ever show a red dot on camera easily, I think my battery might be getting low finally after a few years, but I like this because it has one that has the solar panel. So if you don't have a battery in here, it will run without a battery as long as you're in the sunlight. And then two, I like that you can change the battery easily on the side. You're just using like a little hex bolt, but I like the fact that it's very robust. I mean, I've dropped this thing. You can see the scars on the top. I've dropped it like that and it's not shattered or anything. But one of the best things I like about it is the multiple reticles. You can get like the little 2 MOA dot, or you can get the circle with the dot. I'll get them in green dot as well as red dot. So with this upper here, you can get this upper in a bunch of different configurations. You can get it in a 5-inch barrel, which I don't have. You can get it in the 8-inch barrel, which is the one that I do have, or you can get it in a full-size 16-inch barrel in case you wanted to do this to a rifle. And there's different variations that you can choose. So if you just get standard black, it's gonna be cheaper than if you get a Cerakoted color. Like I mentioned earlier, this one's the Midnight Bronze, and if you choose to get Midnight Bronze, it's another $100 upgrade. You can also buy these as complete pistols or complete SBRs. You don't have to do the conversion unless you just really want to. But I kind of like just doing uppers because for me, I like, you know, with this one, I get to choose the triggers and everything that I have. Whereas if I bought this as a complete gun, you know, it's already gonna have the triggers and stuff in it, then I gotta pay extra to swap them out. So I typically like doing it like this. The other cool thing about this is they tuned this entire system to work with a standard carbine buffer and buffer spring. So you don't got to do any kind of mumbo jumbo with your spring and buffer back here to get it to cycle properly. And we'll go over the shooting footage here in a minute and we'll talk about what my experiences were at the range and if I had to tweak anything to make it work. But that's what it says on their website, that this is tuned already to work with your standard carbine buffer and buffer spring. The third way that you could buy this or build this or whatever you want to do is if you don't want to buy the complete upper, you can literally just buy a barrel and the bolt carrier group. And your whole radial delay is in your bolt carrier group. And these barrels will fit a standard upper receiver because it does have, I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but it does have the cutouts for the M4 feed ramps in the barrel. So you don't got to worry about getting an upper that doesn't have M4 feed ramps in order for it to work. It's just gonna work right out of the box. So if you choose to buy just the barrel and just the bolt carrier group, you can get it in the 8-inch, the 16-inch, or the 5-inch. The only thing is you won't get this particular flash hider or compensator that's included with it. So just keep that in mind. It's literally just a barrel and just a bolt carrier group, but it's everything you need to like convert one of your uppers to radial delay blowback. So the twist rates on these is a 1 in 9 twist regardless of what length barrel you get. They are made of a 416 stainless steel, and the end here is threaded for 1/2 by 28. So all of your standard flash hiders and muzzle brakes that you would put on a standard AR-15 will definitely fit that thread pitch. So the first time I took this thing out to the range, I actually put it on the Aero Precision lower receiver that I have right here from the very first pistol build we ever did on this channel back in 2016. I like using this lower to just test different uppers. I was getting a lot of hammer follow, and then I would just get times where it wouldn't fire. Don't know what happened there. It's hammer follow. I'm gonna have to change the trigger out. Turns out it was just the trigger that was in it. The trigger that was in it previously was a velocity trigger, but that trigger wasn't broken. It was the set screws inside. I guess over the past like 4 years, the blue Loctite just kind of wore out and it just was wobbling inside. I was already waiting to test this CMC flat trigger, so I just threw this one in there and I went back to the range and I didn't have any more problems at all. So first up, we're gonna be shooting a magazine with the American Eagle. See how that performs. No hammer follow at all. Let's try the VMAX, see if there's any difference. Well, I will say this, that ammo is a lot cleaner and it's a lot more manageable. Now, shooting this gun feels really weird in a good way. So for example, when I have this 5.56 upper on here and I'm shooting 223 or 5.56, even though they're the same length barrels and everything, this one feels like you're getting kicked in the sinuses just from all the concussive forces that come back. And it's because I have a muzzle brake on it. And this one has its own style muzzle brake on it as well. But that thing, it's a weird feeling. It's just like you're getting kicked in the sinuses. Whereas this one, I didn't have any of those. So we'll talk about the velocities and stuff here in a minute, but basically you get almost the same velocities with this as you do a 5.56, but you don't get all those concussive forces kicking you in the sinuses, which I thought was a good thing. Another cool thing that I noticed about this is it is incredibly easy to triple tap it, double tap it, and stay on target when you're shooting it. Sometimes, just depending on the type of firearm and the type of caliber it is, when you're doing double taps and triple taps, sometimes you find a gun, raising up or going to the side, just kind of depending on the muzzle device that you have on it. With this one, I felt like I could just hold it on target, no matter how fast I could shoot it. It made me feel like I was a better shooter than I actually am. And so ever since I changed the trigger out, this thing performed flawlessly, like not a single malfunction. The magazines run great. Every single time that you're out of ammo, they will lock open and stay open every single time on the last round. So that's definitely a good thing. So now let's talk about the pros and the cons to this guy. Then we're going to talk about the fatal flaw of this, which is why I think most people won't buy it. So let's talk about the velocities real quick. I don't really have all the proper testing equipment to test velocity, so I have to, go out and search for stuff on the internet from people who have tested the velocities and muzzle energies and all that stuff. But like I mentioned earlier, this is essentially the most powerful pistol round that you can really kind of get right now that you can use in like an AR platform. So for example, with like a standard 5.56 on a barrel of similar length, you'll get about 2,300 to 2,400 feet per second with that type of ammo. With a 5.7, if you use like a 34 grain, you'll get velocities between 2,070 feet per second, all the way up to 2,150 feet per second. So you don't really lose much velocity when you just switch from a 5.56 down to this, using the same size barrel and everything. Now, if you're using 40 grain ammo, like I've been using on this, I haven't been able to get a hold of any 34 grain, but on 40 grain ammo, the standard velocities with an 8-inch barrel are around 1,700 to 1,800. There is fluctuations in that, but that's a pretty darn fast round. Now, if you compare that to my favorite caliber for pistol caliber carbines, that's gonna be this guy. I love 9mm. It's just a very universal round. And I think, with the pandemic and stuff, I think that's proven to be a favorite round of a lot of people. But if you use like a 9mm plus P plus 124 grain, you're at max, you're probably gonna get about 1,200 feet per second. So that's quite the difference, when you switch from like 5.7, which is a pistol caliber round, from like 9mm. And we already know that like 10mm and 45 ACP are gonna be a little bit slower. You took like a 9mm round using a really hot load, and then you took a 5.7 round and you shot them both at say 100 yards or so. The 5.7 on average is gonna be more accurate and have tighter groupings because of the higher velocities. Because at lower velocities, you have more bullet drop, whereas a higher velocity will sustain the height of it for longer. So that just kind of makes sense. The other pro to a 5.7 versus say like a rifle round is you're gonna get very similar velocities. They're not gonna be exactly the same, but you're gonna get virtually the same recoil as a standard 9mm, which I thought was pretty crazy. And then when you pair it up with the radial delay blowback, it's even less recoil than like a standard, bolt carrier group. Now, I don't own any suppressors yet. I know, isn't that weird? Like, I feel like I should have had like 5 suppressors by now. I just haven't done it. But from the information that I've gathered from others who do have suppressors, the thing that they like about it is it has a very fast burning powder. So like, for example, with this upper right here, it's virtually the same length as this barrel right here, but this is in like 223 5.56. So 223 5.56, when you're using like a 7.5, 8-inch barrel, it doesn't burn up all the powder before the bullet exits. And so you don't get all the velocities that you need. And then plus you get a lot of muzzle flash and stuff. But the thing that guys like about this is you can actually take the barrel even shorter than this 8-inch barrel. I think you can get it with a 5-inch. Then you can attach a can to it. And then when you have the suppressor on it and you have everything together, you have a way smaller firearm that performs equivalent to a 5.56 that had a little bit of a longer barrel. So that's, you know, definitely good if it's something that you want to keep small and compact and still have a suppressor on it. That's definitely a pro. You know, like I mentioned earlier in the video, having radial delay blowback is just a game changer. So having the radial delay blowback combined with a 5.7 cartridge is just amazing to shoot. It feels insane. I love it to death. The other pro to this, if you are into suppressors, from other people's testing, I've seen that you can use 22 long rifle suppressors on it, whereas you can't really use 22 long rifle suppressors for 5.56 and 223. Not that the bullet won't fit through them, it's just the amount of pressures that come out of it can ruin the suppressors. That's really good to know because now you can use cheaper suppressors. And probably like the last pro is less muzzle flash. If flash signature is something that you're really concerned about, you're gonna get way less muzzle flash with this round versus a rifle round. And the same thing for 9mm, you're gonna get less flash with that as well, but that is a pro and I felt like I needed to list it. So now let's talk about the two cons that will most likely prevent anyone from buying anything that's 5.7 related. Number one, the cost of ammo. And number two, you can't find it. Even in pre-pandemic times, you couldn't find it. So I got this gun back in January, I believe, of this year. And I went online to order some 5.7x28 ammo. And I couldn't find it anywhere in stock. Like I checked local gun stores, I checked all the different places online. I found one place that had it in stock and it took me 3.5 weeks just to get it. So I ordered that ammo, but I just didn't think it was gonna be here in time. So I sent an email to CMMG and I was like, hey, do you have any 5.7 that you can send me so I can test the gun? And thankfully they did have like about 100 rounds or so to send me. And then I ordered another couple hundred rounds. So I've been able to really, you know, kind of put this thing through its paces, but the rounds were really expensive even in pre-pandemic times. They're about $1 a round. And even today, during the pandemic and all that stuff, right now you can find them for about $1 a round if you're lucky. But right now they're about $1.50 to $2 a round, and that is just way too expensive. Knowing that the ammo is hard to find in non-pandemic times, and knowing that the ammo is so expensive in non-pandemic times, and given that this is the type of gun that you would most likely, you know, do double taps and triple taps with when you're practicing, that's not a sustainable price for a cartridge to practice with. Whereas like 9mm is, or, you know, even 5.56 223 is more sustainable than that in non-pandemic times because it was typically about 30 cents a round. Even 300 blackout I could get in pre-pandemic times for 50 cents a round. It's even more economical to do double taps and triple taps with a 300 blackout than it is with this. And I think that that is gonna be the ultimate reason why nobody buys this. Not to say that it's a bad thing. I think it's an amazing product. I just think because of ammo availability and ammo costs, it just kills it, even for me. If I would have bought this, and let's just say I purchased this and didn't know that it was hard to get ammo and that the ammo was expensive, I probably would have regretted the purchase knowing that after the fact. I probably would have been looking to sell it as quickly as possible because that's just a lot of money to spend on something that rapid fires. Now, I understand like with like 308s and 6.5s and stuff like that, yeah, you're gonna spend about $1 a round, but you're not rapid firing those. You know, those are guns that you're shooting at distance and you take a shot and you have your spotter check to see if you hit it. And then he's like, oh, you gotta adjust your windage or your elevation or something like that. Then you take another shot later. You're not gonna blow through that kind of ammo that quick. So this kind of ammo, you're gonna blow through it really fast. Just one person, this is just one sample size. Ultimately, it comes down to this. I love the product. I just don't like the cartridge price and availability. But let me know, what are your thoughts on this down in the comments section below? Do you own a 5.7 or have you ever shot a 5.7? And have you been looking into getting one? I'd love to know your guys' feedback because I'd love to chat with you in the comments. But in the meantime, hit the subscribe button and the notification button. But until next time, guys, I love you. You guys stay sexy.